Hello, you beautiful and wondrous beings. I have sat down with my new hourglass, a little setup which is partially from yesterday's beautiful lunar eclipse ceremony. So I have my desk still set up from the online gathering with some tools and some things that feel very aligned to both transmit, talk about, share about, and to bring you in closer to the worlds and the realms that are Leonine stream. Some of you may know I'm a Leonine. I am also very, 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 very much human. And the moon, the portal that was the 3-3 portal yesterday, really did anchor a deep sense of coming home to the human experience and coming home to a materially focused, unearthly, an earth mama life, an earth mama trajectory. And this just means that a lot of the focus, a lot of my interests, a lot of our interests, if you're tuning in, it's probably something that's also alive for you, have been perhaps very connected to stars and planets and galaxies far, far away. And although that has been the joy, greatest joy of a cycle of my life to reconnect to the stars, to reconnect to nations and frequencies and memories that I have from my multidimensional self. The invitation with this beautiful eclipse in the constellation of Leo, which was yesterday. When I am recording this, it is early March, but let's go with the Maya time. It is EE-MOSH. And I'm going to turn over the hourglass before I forget, because I want to try to keep these podcasts to about an hour, if possible. And we're working with time in a very different way, so we are allowing the sands to fall and count the hour for us. And it's very ancient and it's very beautiful to be playing with these frequencies and these codes for us all, especially because I am a being that likes to work with new ways of experiencing ancient timekeeping. So, EE-MOSH yesterday was 1 AH-POO in Maya time. And the reason why this particular recording is happening on the water day and the water lily day is actually because Maya time, EE-MOSH days, are great days to work with memory. They are great days to work with our emotions, our waters, our internal waters, our fluids, as I call them, and even our DNA, right? Because our blood, perhaps, and the encoding, right? The encoding that happens when we connect with water. Lotus and lily are flowers known to grow through waters as opposed to just strictly through earth. And both the East and the West had deep tradition with these water flowers. So the lotus coming more from the east. You can think India, you can think China, Asia, these places. The water lily is the magic of the West. And the Maya call the water lily EE-MOSH. And she is both a part of the Maya calendar in the sense that she's an archetype, but she's also a medicine. She's also beauty. She's also grace. She's a teacher in her own right, in her own frequency of existing. And she would have also been used as an ally, a plant ally, medicinally. She would have been used in ceremony, again, in more of that beautification aspect. She would have been used as a portal as well. And she is still used as a portal to this day. And what I am being shown is that when I shifted yesterday's ceremony from the solar eclipse to the lunar eclipse, what opened up was a more watery, a more internal, a deeper dive, a more feminine, a more yin experience of that arc of sun and moon, obviously the moon being more yin in some cultures, right? So we're going with this right now. For the Maya, the moon would have been yin. And for the most part, we are going to be connecting to the closest lineage in my blood to transmit the memories that want to come through. So I have memory of working with the water lily EE-MOSH medicinally from other lifetimes. She's associated with birth as well. She's connected to both Ishel, the goddess that is often represented as three parts, actually: maiden, mother, and crone. She can be a deep ally for cycles of birthing. And she's usually a goddess of the midwives. And she would have used lotus. She would have used lotus for birthing, but also for conception. Hint, hint. Some people know that the lotus or the water lily are, aphrodisiacs, and that they open us to deeper communion, deeper possibilities, deeper connections, if we're willing to see those connections, if we're willing to be vulnerable, to be open, to be heart-centered. Let's take a little drink of the blue lotus that I am connecting to right now, which also happens to have a little calendula flower from my garden, because I want to bring the magic of the flower realms. I want to bring it home too, right? It's gotta be connective also to my own home grid, right? Because lotus don't grow in California, nor do water lilies, at least not the kind that commercially you could end up purchasing. It's not common to even see a lotus or a water lily unless you're in a very specific botanical garden or something that has plants from all over the world. So to bring it home, I actually have been harvesting wild calendula growing in our front fairy garden, and I just added it to my lotus tea yesterday. And there's one more secret ingredient, which I'm going to mention briefly, and then I'm going to talk about it later when I get into the deeper Amerikas piece. So there's a little bit of Canadian maple syrup in here for a touch of sweetness and to really bring the Canadian grids closer to my heart, to bring them alive in my field, and to honor that this has been a communication and a connection that I have been building over time, even though I have never touched land in Canada yet, Canada the country. So let's take a drink of our Blue Lotus with calendula and maple syrup. Wow, that is so lovely. Flowers and trees, man. Flowers and trees. Maple syrup coming from the maple tree. The life force of the maple tree sweetening this beautiful, beautiful flower tea. And so now we're really, really going to be feeling EE-MOSH. We're really going to be feeling the lotus or the lily in the words and the stories that I share. I invoke her as a plant master, a master teacher, an ally, a friend, a sister, a mother, whatever we need her to be. I invoke her sovereignty because the plants are not for us to manipulate. The plants are for us to experience and to learn from, and to also upload frequencies as feedback to the plant kingdom or the plant realm. And what I'd like to offer with this invocation is also a deep, deep honoring of all of the cultures that still practice ancestral and ancient ways of working, of planting, of harvesting, of caring for, of being guardians of the water flowers, because there are many parts of the world that deeply, deeply care for nature, nature spirits, fairies, fairy realms, basically parallel, realms to the one we are experiencing here on Earth as humans. And so now that we've invoked the EE-MOSH frequency, I would like to go back to what I was saying about the lunar eclipse shifting, to be held not so much in the frequency of cacao, but to be held by the frequency of lotus, and to be less about the doing and the activating and more about presence and storytelling and interchange and community seeding, which is what we experienced yesterday and what I am still swimming in today, beautifully swimming in these realms, powerfully swimming in these realms. And a little practice that came to me yesterday as I was deciding how I would guide our gathering was to actually have those in the community that were present or those that would tune in later, to have them go back in time and actually bring vividly to memory, to all of their senses, through all of their senses. So through the sense of taste, of touch, of smell, of sight. And what's the one that I missed? And through feeling. Wait, touch and feeling. Sight, scent, taste. Well, you get the picture. I don't know why I can't. And hearing. Okay, yes, there we go. Okay, so we got the principal 5 senses. And so I asked them to go to the memories of all of their past travels, all of the places they've been, all of the sights and the sounds and the connections and the eye contact and the different languages and the different smells and aromas, the different pace, the different lighting, whatever was truly alive and coming forward to be like re-experienced. And what I truly loved about the practice was that I myself had spaciousness to, in the third song, because I played some music, and by the third song, I had the spaciousness to travel myself, not to all of my memories, but to at least one prominent memory through the song. And the song connected me to Peru, because it was a song that really honors the plants, the trees, and the master plant of Peru that touched me the most, which is ayahuasca. Serpent Mama. You may have heard me speak of her before. I actually spoke about her quite a bit in the last Leonine stream share. But the song nearly brought me to tears. And yet I felt very, very much like this sense of relief and truly completion and closure. Truly completion and closure with all of these past travels that had challenged me, that had moved me to my core, that cracked me open, that taught me new things, introduced me to new things, new ideas, new languages, new everything practically, in a cycle in my life where I really needed a shakeup. I really needed to get out of the United States. I really craved to see the grander world and to not only see it, but to live it. So I didn't want to be like when you go on safari and you just, watch animals from a vehicle. I wanted to actually experience and live the Amerikas in my bones, in my blood, in my womb, in my throat, in my voice, in my ears, in my body, in my sight, in my eyes. I wanted my perceptions, I wanted my ideas, I wanted my beliefs to expand with every place that I would basically merge with. And here's where I'm going to take us back a little bit to some of the earlier journeys in the Amerikas or Amerikas that started coming up today to be felt and actually want to be spoken of, actually want to be highlighted, because a lot of you don't know the deeper stories yet of what even brought me to this moment as a nearly 40-year-old woman back in California, the country of the United States, the land of my birth. And I'm going to let you in deeper. I want you to know that there is resonant community for you, and that everything that the Amerikas has given me, I am ready to give back. I'm ready to pour back into the community. And eventually into some very exciting projects that are going to involve actual funds going into places that support big cats like jaguars and pumas and lions and whatever else is guided. But stay tuned for that. So, born in the United States, 1987, and by 1989, I was on my first plane at age 2 to Mexico. My first country. My closest ancestral relatives actually come from Mexico on both sides of my lineage, both my paternal and maternal lineage. I have grandparents born in Mexico, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and many of them have also obviously been interred in the earth in Mexico itself. I have indigenous lineages that are also part of what is now known as Mexico, but back then was known as just home, right? Lands. Home, there weren't as many borders. There were just tribes, lots of tribes. And so I will name some of the tribes that I am connected to in actually both Mexico and the Amerikas, North America, United States, that I know of. So I am invoking my Yaqui ancestors. I am invoking my Mescalero ancestors, my Maya ancestors. These are, again, the ones that I know of. And they're very, very active in my field. They're very special to me. The Olmec ancestry as well. Sorry, forgot that one. That one wants to be mentioned. And yes, so Mexico from age 2, but Mexico would be a place that I would actually return to over and over and over again to visit family, to begin also a little bit of my independent travels when I studied there in university in 2007. This would actually be a very important summer in which I visited my first pyramids in Teotihuacan, Mexico. And you may know them as the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, Pirámide del Sol, Pirámide de la Luna. And we climbed the top of each of these pyramids with our group. And I remember feeling an utter sense of, wow, expansiveness. Wow, the wind hits you differently up here. Wow, my ancestors, this is their land, this is their home. This is what they're connected to. This is what they have access to and had access to. Places like this of deep spirituality and deep ceremony and deep reverence and deep connection to the above and the below and the within. All realms. From 2007 I would then actually decide to make my way to Europe for the first time in 2008, the following year, mainly because my Mexican ancestry was saying that I needed to have the other side of the coin. I needed to have the European side of that story because Mexico and much of the Americas is the combination or the fusion of the peoples that were there and the peoples that came and started mixing. Yes, some of them took over. Yes, conquer is a word you could use, but at the end of the day, these are all my ancestors, and I'm not demonizing any one of them anymore. They're all just fusion. They are the codes that were needed for my bloodlines to continue this story that is now in me, through my bloodlines. So I'm not going to talk about the Europe side of things, but a lot of you know that I would end up having such a deep connection to Europe that it would become the place that was calling me to live for a longer cycle of time, to somewhat escape my US reality, but also, again, to reconnect with the other side of me, or the other sides of me and my bloodlines. And, you know, what's really come into my body as of late is that I think I'm done with Europe for a cycle of time. Not because I don't want to visit, not because I don't maybe still want to live there at some point in my life, but because of all of the work that I have truly done on a scale that is just blows my own mind, what I've done since my spiritual journey really kicked off, but also just in the last couple of years, the way I've moved in the Amerikas, the way I've allowed America to reactivate parts of my purpose and my legacy and what I want to leave behind in this world when I'm long gone. The ceremonies, the teachings that I've held from these grids, not only United States of America, but America. So I'm talking all the places I've lived and traveled through extensively. Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Peru, Mexico. The time I spent in the Hawaiian island of Oahu in 2012, the Hawaiian island of Maui last year in 2025, the Caribbean island of Curacauta or Curacao last year being one of the most profound 2-week journeys I've ever undertaken, and I still am unraveling all of the goodness, all of the honey, all of the nectar, all of the pink codes. Those of you that understand the pink reference for Curacauta, you know, the pink colored stones and just the crystalline light and frequencies and heart that the island hold. And knowing also that there are more islands that are connected to beautiful Curacauta in the Caribbean that I may never visit in the physical in my lifetime, but that somehow also I felt while standing in very specific points on the island that my beautiful sister took me to, guided me, allowed me to explore energetically, and I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful for the waters of the Caribbean. So there's only 2 Caribbean islands that I have visited. This island, and then literally what I consider my second country after Mexico, which, some might say it's a territory, but I consider it a country, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was part of my early teenage adventuring when it was presented to us through our church that we could go on this trip. I think it was about 10 days or 2 weeks, and do some volunteer work, what some people call missionary work, in service, right? In service. And we had to raise the money, my sister and I. My sister did most of the work. I promise you. I promise you, she did most of the work selling for us. And then I just, was happy that we had the money to go, because it cost like $1,000 or so for each of us. And we sold stuff at our high school and to family members and probably to strangers. I don't know, like we had to make up the money, because my parents didn't just have that lying around. And I remember that journey was really wild, because it's when I realized that even though I thought I spoke fairly poor Spanish most of my life, because my family in the US spoke better Spanish than me, and my family in Mexico spoke way better Spanish than me. It wasn't until I went to Puerto Rico and I was with a bunch of American kids from the United States that spoke not a lick of Spanish, and we are volunteering in these homes of Puerto Ricanos who don't speak much English, that I realized how much Spanish I actually could communicate, and how it came easy, and how as long as I was connected to my heart, they would embrace my Spanish and they would embrace me. And I remember my host in Puerto Rico, the house, well, I say host, but like we all stayed in a gymnasium, very, very simple, like I'd say army status, like we had sleeping bags on the floor, and it was just this big empty gymnasium. So nothing fancy. There were showers and stuff, but it was all very like, not 4-star, not even 2-star probably. So then the host wasn't somebody that we lived with. The host was the family, or the person whose house we were each assigned to work on. And we were assigned in groups. And so my group, I remember I was the only one that spoke Spanish, and I was the only like partial Latina, you could say. Everybody else was pretty all-American white, and I had to do a lot of translating for them, and I did it happily both ways. But then there were some extra perks, because she would like cook me nice things and like gift me things to take back with me, I remember she was a really great cook. And I also remember that she had a daughter that I really adored, like probably toddler age. And I loved feeling that warmth that Latin America really does effortlessly. And yes, Caribbean islands, warm countries, lots of sun. Of course, we are fiery people, and our hearts are fired up for the most part. We're passionate, we love hard, and we open our homes, to others. And I can speak for my family as well here in the United States. These are a lot of the same values that have been passed on from my Mexican ancestry, that your home is your home, but for the most part, if somebody needs a place to stay, if somebody is truly having a hard time, if you can do something for somebody else, whether it's again, give them a few nights to stay in between travels, or in the case of my cousin from Mexico, like give her a place to stay kind of indefinitely. She lived with us when I was a teenager, and she actually lived in my room. And she was 10 years older than me, and she was kind of starting her little American dream or whatever, working and going out and having an experience, starting her life in California. And then actually she got pregnant, and she had to move out to give birth and move in with, at the time, her partner. And my aunt and uncle came from Mexico, and then they moved in with us for a little bit, and then eventually, moved to their own place while they were getting my cousin settled after the baby came. And I guess I'm telling these stories because home has always been a very fluid, ever-changing thing for me. I've had a home with my parents since I was born, but there were times where the household wasn't just mom, dad, me, and my sister. Sometimes, like I said, family member was moving into the spare room for a time, or a long cycle of time. Or even once I moved to Europe, my parents were still every now and then hosting people, again, who were in a hard time and needed a hand. Usually somebody of family, sometimes not somebody directly blood related to us. And that comes from the values of, what you have, you share. If you can give, give. And I feel emotional saying that. The waterworks, ooh, they're real. I'm gonna take a sip of tea. In my travels, I experienced both. I experienced people welcoming me because I needed a place to stay. Not forever, but short term. And then I also experienced the opposite. I also experienced people closing their hearts, and usually would involve like offering me to stay at their place and then very quickly changing their mind and asking me to leave. And when you're on the road and you're nomadic and you're traveling, you really have to adapt. You really have to be willing to experience challenge, and yeses can become no's, and then later on a no can become a yes. Nothing is ever, there's a lot of fluidity, there's a lot of possibility. There's people change their minds. Even I change my mind often. And so I don't fault the people that offered me a home or a place or something safe amongst so much unsurety and volatility in some moments and chaos in other moments. But I guess it's all coming back to what I learned from my cultures. My Amerikas frequency is that we need to open our hearts more. And we're going to be asked more to build from places where we're not fearful and we're not closed-minded and we're not closed-hearted. I've been in a cycle lately where I went very hermit, And I was trying to close the world out again and reevaluate, like, is any of this real? Does any of this really matter? Does my service matter? Does my voice matter? Does my spiritual path or endeavors, right? The hero's journey, does any of this matter? And I went so far into this hermitage that it hurt me. And that I realized that I wasn't using my gifts and I wasn't actually contributing in the way I'm literally designed to contribute to this planet. Not only do I link people in the grid through my ceremonies and my gatherings and my teaching spaces, but I also plant seeds that grow in their own time on the one-on-ones that I have with people, and also through podcasts and through writings on Substack, and even the way I share on Instagram. It's very much seed planting. It's to inspire your own journey. It's to inspire your own strength and power and courage to emerge, and then to be accessible to you throughout every up and down and every cycle of life. Sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down, and sometimes, you feel so confident and so ready to put yourself out there, and other times you literally feel like you've been beaten up in the ring by every kind of martial artist and MMA fighter and ex whoever, friend or frenemy or whoever, that doesn't want to see you succeed because you whatever wronged them, and you really do feel like you're just beaten up and you don't even know if you want to carry on. But of course you always come out of it. I always come out of it, and I come out of it with greater vision and greater strength because I made it through another round, right? In the ring, another round. And I don't know why this kind of like boxing ring or fighting ring is coming up, but maybe it has to do with the Maya Trecena that we're in, which is the Trecena of AH-POO, which is the hero. And we know the hero has to go through some fights in his story arc, right? He meets some demons and some monsters on the path, and he pulls out his weapons and he's got to do what he's got to do. So maybe this is why it's coming up. But I want to offer you the opportunity right now to just think about your connection to Amerikas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the article that I was looking at before I started recording that has a little bit of facts on the Amerikas. So first of all, it says America consists of 35 sovereign states and 22 dependent territories, which is interesting. So that dependent territories usually refers to like a European nation or some other nation that is considered like the actual country in some other part of the world. Okay, it says America consists of a total land area of 42 million kilometers squared. 42 million kilometers squared, or 16 million square miles. And it represents 28% of the Earth's habitable surface. America's coastlines have a combined length of almost 330 1,000 kilometers, or just over 200,000 miles. And there are 1.04 billion people living in America. And just so you know, America, all of this that I'm giving you facts on is not United States, it's America. Okay? It's all of it. It's North, South, Central, and Caribbean. And these 1.04 billion people account for around 34% of global economic output. And then one other notable mention here is tectonically, America consists of 3 continental plates: North America, South America, and the Caribbean plate, on which parts of the mainland also lie. For political reasons, the Americas are often divided into North and South. But the division into North, Central, and South America prevails, especially in Europe. So it's interesting because I guess some of us don't distinguish Central America, but I do, and I always have, because it feels like a very distinct frequency to North America, where I'm from, and South America, where I've also traveled. So it is interesting that some people just consider it North and South, and in that case, Central America would go under North America. And that would mean North America was Canada, Mexico, United States, plus Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. Another fact I wanted to share with you is actually this interesting part about Greenland, because Greenland's been coming into my field quite a bit lately, quite a bit. And Greenland is not that far from Iceland either. But I've always considered Iceland as like very Europe, right? I mean, it is considered Europe. So Greenland here, it says, a point of contention occasionally arises in the allocation of Greenland to Europe or America. Greenland is a territory of the Danish kingdom and thus politically belongs to Europe. Geographically, Greenland belongs to North America. So I just learned this today. Greenland geographically belongs to North America. Maybe hence why it's getting louder in my field with all of this America work. And then another interesting point here, the US state of Hawaii, on the other hand, which we know is made up of many islands, 7 or 8, I always forget the number. On the other hand, Hawaii belongs politically to America, but geographically and culturally to Polynesia. So there you have it. Some facts about the Americas. And I wanted to offer you this time to just kind of, again, feel into your connections with America or Amerikas, especially now that I've kind of laid it out for you. It's North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. It's an immensely rich part of the world, and there is so much more to connect to and to discover, even for myself, even from California. I feel like I'm going to be connecting to the Americas a lot more through community, a lot more through the people that end up finding Leonine Stream on the internet or Dragons Love Cacao on the internet and want to link up and again interchange, right? Interchange ideas and thoughts and hearts and teachings. So it feels really good recording this on EE-MOSH, because what greater way to intend that than to speak to the waters, to speak to the collective waters within each of you, and to speak to the waters of our mother, this planet, to speak to the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and tell them, you know, the Gulf also, the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of, I was gonna say America, yeah, because it's now contended in different parts of the world. It's either called the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, which is hilarious. It's so funny how humans fight over who owns what, but at the end of the day, this is all America. Mexico and the United States fighting over the water that touches those countries is actually pretty ridiculous, and they should probably name it something neutral that they can both agree on. That's just my take on it. But yeah, I wanted to let you know the places in the Amerikas that I've actually traveled to. And it's not even that many, but some of them I've been to twice or 3 times, or in the case of Mexico, like a dozen times, you know. And some I have only been, again, for a very short but very intentional, very potent cycle. So I've been to Puerto Rico, as I mentioned. Costa Rica I've been to 3 times. I was actually there in 2012, first filming a movie. I was a part of the film crew. Then later, that same year, I returned because there was a little like romantic thing going on, which definitely didn't last very long, but it did take me back to Costa Rica to explore more of the country. Yeah, that time I was both on the Pacific and the Caribbean side of the country. And I got to experience many beautiful, natural, just insanely beautiful places, as I did also while working on the film. We were literally in a hotel on the beach, walking distance from the sand, filming on the beach quite often at all hours of the day, because different lighting, different storytelling and scenes and things had to be filmed in sunset and sunrise, and in the national park, Manuel Antonio National Park, with monkeys and everything, and crocodiles. I mean, we did so many things when we were there filming that movie for a month, an entire month. I'm so grateful for that experience. And then I went one more time in 2013, and that's when literally me and the romantic situation, literally it all blew up. And yes, I did have quite like a reality check on just, you know, where my heart was probably a little bit too ambitious. And yeah, I came back to the US very heartbroken, but also determined to do more things for myself, to do more things, to follow more of my dreams. And I remember that was the summer that I ended up, spring and summer, that I ended up connecting with a production job in LA that eventually hired me to do a job in Miami. And then I started traveling to Miami, Florida, also Orlando, Florida, also up and down Florida, all the way to Georgia, and to the very, very tip of the Florida Keys, all the way in Key West. Little isle by isle. They're called keys, right? When it's like smaller than an island even. So we drove through all of the keys. We stayed in a few of them, and then we eventually stayed in the final key, Key West, the southernmost point of America, of United States. And I remember it was very, very special to be connecting with the other coast of America, of the United States, because I had only really known the Pacific. And I loved my time in Florida. It was very expansive, and, you know, there were many, many gifts from it. There was a relationship, there was growth in how I worked in TV and film. There was also just spontaneity, a lot of wonder and curiosity about Florida and the surrounding that eventually got me traveling internationally even more. So 2014, I ended up going to Peru for the first time. And this was with friends from Florida, from Miami, that I had met on that job. And three of us had quite the journey in Peru. And I remember specifically about that trip, the water was very prominent, and we swam also on the beach somewhere in Peru, not somewhere very common actually. It was like a military, like not timeshare, but yeah, somewhere where the military families go to vacation on the beach. And I remember I got in the water all the way, and it was my first time in water in Peru. And I think it was Pacific waters. I don't know, Pacific, Atlantic, I'd have to look that up. Ocean. But down in South America, very, very, very different codes, very, very different frequencies. And yes, the link here is that a few days in the Sacred Valley of Peru, on that trip, was the seeding of a later journey in which I would be guided to return to Peru in 2020 for my reconnecting to the master plants in their lands, in the jungle, which I will save to go in depth on that in another time. But you could listen to the previous Leonine stream. I talk a little bit about the plants, the master plants from Peru, in that transmission. But 2020 being the year of the great pause, or, you know, the sacred pause, the slow your roll, right? The world shutting down and everybody having to reevaluate, you know, what's the meaning of all of this, and, you know, my job and my relationship and my whatever ended, and who am I, you know, all of that soul searching, gut wrenching cycle of events. For me, it was a very grounded year. It was one of the places I had spent the most time besides Spain. So a 10-month cycle in Peru. Yes, I moved a few times. Yes, there was still a lot of emotional change and mental change and physical change, even like moving from town to town, or from the jungle to then the mountains, the high mountains of the Andes in Cusco, to then moving to a village in the Sacred Valley, but much more remote, Urubamba, on the sacred river of Urubamba. And yes, there was also even a little journey to Lake Titicaca, which was when I thought I was going to cross into Bolivia, but the world shut down, so I had to return my ass all the way to Cusco in like 24 hours on the mad dash back before lockdown started. So there was a lot of movement, and a lot of change, and yet the consistency was the frequency of Peru, the magic of Peru. The codes, the animals, the languages, the colors, the sounds, the smells, the memories, the cellular memories of Peru. That was the constant. And it's forever a place that will have meaning and profundity, and just, it's a huge part of my reconnection to the serpent, my reconnection to the waters. Because the serpent of Peru is the water serpent. It is the anaconda. It is the Amazon, the Amazonas, the Rio, the river Amazonas that runs through so many countries in South America. It is the life giver. It is the mother serpent, Aya. And so while I was speaking there, I put some stones in my hand. I've had them here next to the microphone, and these are actually an oracle deck, a very unique oracle deck that was given to me by a sister. And they are made up of little glyphs drawn on stones from Lake Titicaca. So Lake Titicaca, like I said, in between Peru, halfway in Bolivia. And the deck is called Andean Soul Rocks Pathway of Light. And so each of these stones was picked from around the lake. And you're supposed to drop the stones, or like alternate the stones from one hand to the other until one of the stones falls out of your hand. So take a moment here, because this message is going to be for you who's still listening. And I want you to receive a message from Amerikas, from Peru or Bolivia or South America or Lake Titicaca. Whatever you need, just tune into your heart, and we're gonna see what the frequency is. Just so you know, it already fell out. I'm looking at it, but it fell out face down. So I'm gonna turn it over right now. I believe there are 22 stones in this oracle deck. And I hope you realize that the magic is real, because I had this stone on the altar from ceremony yesterday, and I almost was going to do this oracle pool without this stone, because it's on the altar, charging with all of the jaguars and the pumas and the lotus from yesterday, the cacao seeds, all the magic. And something made me put it back in, and it's been in the bag the whole time until I put the stones in my hands and started shifting them from one hand into the other. So the one that fell out is the puma, the only leonine in this oracle. So I'm going to put all of the stones back, and I'm going to read the message from the book, The Andean Soul Rocks. So the puma represents courage. That's the message. And I'm going to read the first intention with this stone, because when you pick 3 stones, then you would place the stone in one of the realms, the underworld, the physical world, or the higher world, the spiritual world. But there's also a description that is just for like a first intention with the deck or the stone. So it's the one I'm going to read. Puma, courage. The sacred city of Cusco was the heart of the Inca Empire before the Spanish conquest in 1532. Today it is still most tourists' favorite city in Peru. And Cusco is the city that I was living in the most, like 6 months of that 10-month cycle. So I just wanted to add that. Today, it is still most tourists' favorite city in Peru for its rich, deep history and for the party atmosphere of seekers. Cusco is shaped in the form of a puma. In the time of the Incas, this city of courage was a vital, creative city constructed of stone. the land of the four regions, and the place where the royal four highways began and ended was called Tiwantinsui. It was centered at the navel of the puma in Cusco's town square. The puma is the most revered of the animals in the Andean culture. Puma represents courage made in the form of a feline that walks in the physical world. Puma walks alone and has the courage to face personal fears even in the face of his own mortality. And the first intention. The Puma stone has chosen you for this particular intention. It gives you a message of reassurance. It helps you to have the courage to walk with grace in this world while facing your fears. It asks you to give yourself the space to feel the release of the old, which is pretty much what we were doing yesterday in our closure eclipse ceremony. Old fears, old criticisms, and old beliefs. Begin to embrace the reality before you. Flow with it. See, that's the water energy there. Flow with it. Accept it. You will always have doubts, concerns, and difficult situations because life is made up of these. But you will also always have choices to find different options, to do it differently. And I've been talking about choice non-stop leading up to this eclipse. Sometimes those options scare you. The Puma stone tells you to embrace your fears. Hold courage close to your heart and remain in love with yourself and humanity. Freedom doused in courage and bravery will be your reward. So there you have it. The Leonines are pretty much here with us for the duration. They are doing this dance with us. They are why this podcast is part of my mission now. They are part of the evolution of my medicine and why my medicine is inviting in more aspects of you that are like a big cat. Courage, strength, this primal connection, the power of these four-legged, big-bodied, with the tail whipping in the back, walking the earth in just power and grace. And you take notice. You take notice of them when you see them in the wild or when you even look at an image or a video of them online. They transmit their codes. They transmit also the codes of the lands where they roam. So for you today, the codes that you're receiving is from South America, from the lands of the Puma. So this could be anywhere from Peru, Argentina, Chile, anywhere up and down the spine of the Andes mountain range. I think these are the main places in South America where the Puma roams. But if I'm missing anything, I apologize. And yeah, I want to offer you an invitation. Now that we're here, I want to offer you an invitation. We're a little bit over the hour, and that's okay. I already flipped the hourglass because we had to keep going. But I want to invite you into the first Leonine stream offerings besides the eclipse ceremony. These are going to be gatherings. I'm not calling them ceremonies. They're gatherings. We're gathering the Leonine stream community, and we're going to get together on Thursday nights, the 19th and the 26th of March from 5 to 7 p.m. California time. And this invitation is going to carry into May. So we're going to do 2 gatherings a month, and I will do my very best to post the dates and times in advance so that you can plan to be there live. You could always be there on the replay, but the whole point is that these spaces are for discussion. These spaces are for opening hearts. It's going to be less me telling you a bunch of stuff and more interchange and sharing and cultural and grid, connection and exchange. So I'm holding the space, and there might be a theme. We'll see. There might be a theme per gathering, but the gathering is called Community, and the tea is spelled TEA. So we're going to be drinking tea, different teas. You're going to be welcome to talk about the tea that you're guided to drink that day, or if you put anything special in it, like me today talking about maple syrup and all the things. But we're going to really work with the plant realm, the flower realm in each of these gatherings to open the heart, to link us, and again, to help us transmit the necessary pieces. And we're going to hold space for everybody's voice, right? This isn't about dominating a conversation or making it all about one thing or one idea or one place. This is about community. So everybody's going to have an equal opportunity to move through things, to be felt, to be seen, to receive support, to receive celebration, whatever is alive, whatever is truly alive in the Leonine community. So these offerings are going to be on the website starting this week, and you can either book for March. For just 1 month, you can pay for March, and that will invite you to both tea ceremonies, community, so it's going to be online via Zoom, or there's going to be an option to pay for basically 6 gatherings, 2 in March, 2 in April, and 2 in May. So right away, you can just decide, like, I'm here for the 3 months with this community, and I want to support the work that Ariana is doing because it's important and because it brings beautiful things to my life. This is what my community has said to me. So I'm just reiterating that this work is meaningful, and this work is very, very, very needed in the world right now. As much as I would like to keep traveling and moving and going, I want to settle in right now to California so that I can hold this space with power, consistency, showing up for you. Because I know your grids are going to be blessed when you come and get supported, when you come and get loved up on. You see what I'm saying? So, and now that I'm thinking about it, maybe the first community theme could actually be Amerikas. And I would love to see how our beautiful community comes together and shares codes about the Amerikas. So places that you've been born in the Amerikas, places that you've traveled, places that you're in love with and keep going back to, places whose medicine is a deep part of your life. For instance, IXCACAO. I know a lot of you are working with American grown cacao, right? From Mexico all the way down to the South America, where it grows and thrives, and this medicine is reaching all over the world. So it could be very, very interesting to open up the space for conversations about Amerikas. I love this theme. I love this so much. I'm so excited. One last thing, it's going to be affordable, you guys, okay? 2 gatherings per month, $50 per month. All 3 months, so all 6 gatherings is going to be $111. Believe me when I say this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to get into this year. But it's a very important piece to start bringing the community together regularly. The Leonine Stream community regularly meeting. And if this Puma has anything to say about these gatherings, the fact that it went from the altar to the bag as like an option, just a possibility of what Oracle wanted to come out, right? But there's 22 total stones. So there was only a 1 in 22 chance that this Puma was going to come out. And yet the magic is that this is the one. This is the representation of our frequency right now. With the Leo moon yesterday, the moon is probably still in Leo today, actually, because it takes 2.5 days to move into each sign, more or less. And the Leonines speaking to us about courage, the courage to show up as yourself, the courage to change over time and be witnessed in that change, and the courage to grow, right? If we're going to be gathering monthly, twice this month, twice in April, twice in May, who will you be on that 6th community gathering? Will you be the same person? Will you have allowed more courage into your life and to rise up from your belly and your heart and be shown to shine out into the world? That is my prayer for all of you Leoninas. I didn't mention Guatemala and Honduras in the recap of all of the places in the Amerikas that I've been, nor Panama, which was just a quick stopover of less than 24 hours. But I'll tell you what, there's going to be a whole separate transmission about Guatemala, because this is one of the places that is most connected to my medicine, my Maya lineage, and all the things. So that's going to be in a separate transmission. Stay tuned for that. But for now, we'll close out this beautiful time together, the ode to the Amerikas, and my real American dream, which I will share with you now, is to build from here. To build upon all of those travels, to build upon all of those threads and connections and seeds I've already planted. To build from my home, my choice home right now, Los Angeles, California, Cali, and see all the goodness, see all the ripples, see all the ways that my reality and the reality of the people in this community shifts and changes for the better, for the greatest and the highest and the most fun and the most bliss and the most blessed life experience that we can co-create here on planet Earth. I love you all for being here. I love you even if you're not here. You already knew that. And I will see you all on the next one. And please do check out the link for community, because we're going to get down and we're going to have amazing, amazing growth through the next 3 months together. Love you.